welcome to Nature's Neighbor. I'm Melanie. I'm your host. I'm waiting for my co-host, Josh, who will probably be coming in pretty quickly, but happy Monday to each and every one of you out there. And here we are on the first Monday of October, and, I can't start a conversation out without first talking about the weather. Weather. It is cold. Yes, we're getting a little bit of warmth during the day, but at night, dropping into the low 40s in October is definitely showing that we are in our fall season, right? But it's challenging because we haven't really had the temperatures of a normal summer. We've had a cold summer, so not getting up to our normal record heats for over periods of time. And to some of us humans, it's been very blessing because, a lot of people don't like the heat, but, the heat serves a purpose, and it serves a big purpose when it comes to farming. And well, when you don't get it, farming just has a whole nother side of it that you just got to figure out how to roll with it as it comes. And so, scared me, Miguel. So, that's what we do. That's, as a farmer, we figure it out. How do we roll with the weather? How do we roll with the regulations? It's, regulations are a lot like the weather. You can't ever predict them. You think people would vote, and it should be very transparent to what we voted for and when it's going to be implemented and how it's going to be implemented. Is it going to court? Is it not going to go to court? But yet, as business owners and farmers and producers, we're dealing with regulation right on. And so how do we keep things going when there's so much uncertainty? Here we're, upon election time, people are getting their ballots, their special election ballots in their mail, understanding what all of that means. It's important. And this is the time more now than ever, wherever you stand politically, that you need to get involved and you need to learn your information from the sources, not from media that throws out bites or media that is making their profit off of advertisement. Look at the advertisers of the news articles that you guys are getting your information from. There's a lot to be said about this, and there's a lot to be, broken down to what is real and what isn't. But, I just putting that out there because the last couple of weeks have been very mentally challenging when it comes to regulation. What is right? What is wrong? I kind of put it out there that, if I could do what every customer asked me to do legally, I'd be sitting very pretty when it comes to business. But when it comes to the reality of what I'm legally allowed to do, there's this huge struggle. So what do? We get creative, because at the end of the day, if consumers are asking for it, and us producers can produce it safe, honestly, ethically, transparent, then what's the question? Why can't we do it, right? Well, there's a lot to be said about commerce law, property laws, liability laws, civil law. There's all these laws that realistically are very important, but I should have went to law school and became an attorney, because I would be really sitting very pretty right now if I could actually, argue the law, because honestly, I really feeling more and more every day to argue the law. But at the same time, here we are, what way is the pendulum swinging? And the pendulum is swinging to a very strange introduction to fall when weather is chilly. And what does all of this mean when it comes to weather and farming and what we're going to do? So people need to understand too that farming is not just always about, harvesting a tomato, this time of the year, harvesting a pumpkin. A lot of us, including myself, are harvesting for next year. What does that mean? I'm harvesting seed production for next year. So, understanding that when we aren't getting vine ripened tomatoes consistently and at the accurate time, there's only a certain percentage of time that we can get our seeds to be viable or good, or be able to be strong enough to be able to regerminate. So this weather is definitely playing havoc today that's going to play challenges in the future, right? So what is the most important thing that I am doing as a farmer, as a business owner, is not putting all my eggs into one basket, right? Because in my world, I'm walking around the farm with all the eggs in that one basket. My luck, I would trip and fall and break all those eggs, right? So I need to always have segregation of, okay, this harvest and this harvest, just in case I trip and I drop that bucket, I'll still have the other bucket so that I'll be able to sell, right? Kids can't eat, but the store will have eggs to sell, right? That's what it means by not putting all your eggs into one basket. But at the same time, too, it's getting creative with the resources that I have. So as you see on the screen, Vintage Club and Exchange, yes, it still has myshopify.com. There's going to be a new domain here pretty soon. But I have created the website. I have created a whole platform of how this club is going to work. There's so much to this because I am excited to actually form within a business format, not a nonprofit, right? We're not going to do nonprofits. We are going to do it as a business format, creating this club of transparency. You're going to see where money comes in, product comes in. You're going to see how it's handled, and then you're going to see how it's exchanged. And you're going to understand what barter and trade is. Everything is going to be legal and compliant, but it's also going to be able to be community managed. And so whether, anybody that wants to step up to the plate and be a part of it is welcomed, but it's going to have the compliancy issues and it's going to have the values of issues addressed in this club. So what does all of this mean? So all of our, whatever scale you are in, right? You have backyard, you have containers, you have a history of years of collection of recipes. You come from a traditional culture and you have recipes that you want to share, whether it be food-based, soil-based, seed collection. My mother-in-law and I were talking yesterday. We have our Sunday morning breakfast where we check in with my mother-in-law. We all share our same property, but she lives across the pond, and my children and my husband and I walk across the pond dam and go to grandma's house for breakfast every Sunday morning. It's just a decompression day, and it's a day to reconnect with family. But it's also that fun time that I get with my mother-in-law and celebrating my husband, her son, and my children, her grandchildren. And it was fun because she was super excited to have my daughter and I at the table and wanting to share her jam that she made from grapes that have been growing on our property before they got there. The history of these grapes have, gone back, and the owner before, and then the organization. So it used to be an old boys camp that was our property back in the early 1900s. It was the area that was known as the last point before it got really hot. So farmers and ranchers to the north of our property that would move cattle or trade from the north would leave their children at our property because it was a boys camp, because beyond that point, it got really hot. But they were on their way to where Cal Poly sits now, because it used to be the old, livestock area or trading area. I mean, this is years ago, right? This is like early 1900s kind of talk on our property. And yes, my in-laws have years of history, but they also have had access to the history before they even purchased the land that was shared upon people that had accessed or lived on that land. And so this old boys camp. So there was this area where the old pond, some of the old school guys from Templeton talk about where our pond sits, because they all used to go swimming in our old pond. So there's this area right down past the pond that would get a washed area. Well, there's these beautiful red grapes. Guess what? They have no name. They have no species. They have, early in August, you can harvest them as green and they're sweet, but you let them go to red and they're even more sweet. My mother-in-law makes grape jelly from them when they're red, and they're so sweet and so good, but not like sugar sweet. They actually have a great flavor and they're really, really good. Yes, they're seedy, so we got to filter it, right? You got to strain it as you're cooking down the grape juice to make it into jam. it was funny because yesterday's conversation became when she shared it with her customers, and they were talking, well, what kind of grapes are these? What's the name of the grape that you're growing? And my mother-in-law is like, well, it doesn't have a name. These are grapes that were planted before they had a name. Before the name was, they were the stock of owned by a certain person, and they would just share it, right? It wasn't about, the species or the name or the Latin name of what it is. It was, I had an overabundance of grape stalks this year. I pruned them back. Here, let's share them, right? We'd go to the community town square and we would exchange, we would have grape stalks, the neighbor would have grain, and we would exchange. This is how things took place way back when. They didn't have, this is, Thompson seedless or a Concord with seeds. These were a green, eaten green, sweet, or let it even go redder. They're even sweeter. So we were talking about this and, sharing this whole, vintage knowledge of food. It really came to resonate in me of realizing how much of this needs to start being cataloged or journaled or, shared. Because as I go back to the store and I, being a business owner and I'm trying to sell wholesome food and food that, is grown within California and honest and transparent and regulated and all compliant, I started to realize that we have become this one size fits all. If it doesn't fit perfectly in that category, then it's not going to be done anymore. And I've also realized, being with consumers and customers as much as I am, I'm starting to realize that people are starting to ask a lot of the same thing: the red tomato, the iceberg lettuce, the green or red grape, not, a varieties of difference. And what I'm realizing is there's a lot of species, including natives, whether it be the oak trees that have been clear cutted and nobody's asking, have they ever been replanted, or the development that, agreed to taking down those trees, but was supposed to replant the same species on a different property in order to reforest or regenerate what they are removing, right? And as farmers, we're going to grow things that are going to be sold, right? None of us can afford in this market and in this time to just grow just because. We did have a climate for a long period of time that we could grow the market stuff and have the area to be able to play around with different species or different colors of things. Nowadays, it's not possible because financially people can't do it. So what happens when we, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and if I don't keep those red grapes that my mother-in-law used to make grape jelly, if I don't have them growing, will my children ever have the option to make the same jelly? Yes, it might seem minuscule or something that is irrelevant to most people. But at the same time, where do we draw the line when we say it's not important to hold on? It's not important to carry it on. There's always going to be something, whether it might not be a red grape, but there will be a grape available. Are we becoming that generation that choice is not important anymore? Is choice irrelevant? Are we becoming the society that we're a one size fits all? And if it doesn't fit in the category, or if it doesn't fit in that box that we're supposed to check, then it doesn't matter. Have we become that? And I'm talking in relevance of food and resources and the ability to keep things going. Because as you see across the screen, I have my Vintage Club and Exchange website up. It is not up for accumulating money, but it is up if you're interested. Send me a message. You want to get updated on our upcoming newsletters, put your information there, because these are the kind of things that are stimulating me to do this group, and it's because I know there are resources that are out there that I want people to gather and share. It's not about just giving it away. It's about the knowledge of it. It's about understanding what it took to keep it coming. It's also understanding how regulation is increasingly happening and destroying the option of choice. And it's, if that I'm just going to say, if that pork belly doesn't have nitrates on it, how is it safe to legally sell? This is a regulation that people are wondering about their bacon, right? And people are wondering why several months ago it was hard to find bacon in the grocery store. Well, I'm going to tell you, it has everything to do with Prop 12 and the new regulation with bacon. And people don't realize that. Like, yes, okay, bacon is a luxury item, but at the same time, are we again getting rid of that choice? Josh has finally joined us, and he's heard most of this. This is what I'm talking about the group that I'm forming, the club that I'm forming. But it's also at the same time as the importance of this club is not only to have the exchange of, you want something, I might have it, so we can exchange. If you have something of value, we can exchange. It's not just the want; it's understanding the knowledge that has come from before to bringing us to the present. To be able to have catalogs or journals of the histories of species or tools or recipes that they might be stuck away in a cabinet, and people don't understand what is something in that recipe that they might want to pull out years from now and actually make.
Yeah, so many things get lost to the wayside, especially if we don't use them. So I think that, one thing of reading recipe, one other thing of kind of knowing it in your hands, or certain things that maybe really make it work, or why do people use certain ingredients, to do certain things.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily always going by the recipe. I, learned this from my grandparents and my mother-in-law. And we're talking about, because we harvested a bunch of grapes from our property, that we can date back to the early 1900s. We didn't plant them. And the conversation came because her customers were asking, what is the name of the grape that she's growing to make these grapes, right? And it wasn't about that. It was, the years of how old these grapes are. And every year she makes us elderberry jam and grape, and the elderberries are farmed from native elderberries, and the grapes are from this property. And, we talked about the histories even before we were there. We have, almost 60 years on the same property, right, of history. But at the same time, before that, they had that history shared with them. Before they moved onto the property, the previous owners shared. And the previous owners before, or the previous habitants shared with that owner of what that property, the history of that property. And the community has also shared with me the history of our own property. And so it's fun to understand where these have come from. Of course, I'm journaling. Of course, I'm keeping, track. But I wonder how many other people have done that with things. Talking about the fact that regulation is changing the varieties of things, right? We don't have, as farmers and as business owners, we don't have the ability to financially keep all the varieties coming and offer all of those choices of how many different apples we really can grow here, or tomatoes, because how do we financially keep doing this, right? But at the same time, because regulation is costing us, paperwork, sign-offs, insurance, all these things are costing us. We need community backing, but with it's not just the support of our businesses, it's the knowledge of what it is, that you can't just let this orchard go away. If we let this orchard go away, there goes our choices. You can't just find a seed and replant this orchard and it's going to be here in the next 2 years. It's 15, it's 20 years from now that it's going to come. And that's where this club is coming from, because it's also, if gas is going to be regulated, or fuel, right? If fuel is going to be regulated, and if we're going to all electrical appliances and hand tools, who can afford their PG&E bills to charge all of these batteries? I'm just saying, right? But at the same time, let's think about the Amish, or think about knowledge before all of these modern technologies have happened. Look at our natives. Look at my mother-in-law, who, would spend months on this ranch without any kind of modern technology and had 3 little babies and still came to town on a dirt road that's also known as Highway 46 West now. You know what I mean? So it's like she survived and she raised healthy babies. And, You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, people thrived without modern conveniences, and really, do we think that that's progress? It's sort of the double-edged sword. Well, in one end, but you look at people's health, you look at people's abilities or knowledge of things, or what our food does to us, instead of what our food could do for us, is really changing.
yeah.
And not for the better necessarily. So
And it
a lot of
hasn't
these
been.
things have a lot of reasons that you do these things seasonally, because of, like we talked about, I think last show, even just this is what your body needs at this time of year. That's why this is in season. And if you start to deny those natural rhythms and some of those natural processes, things break down, not only, in our systems, but also, within ourselves.
And this whole thing, like, what I started the conversation off of talking about the weather because it's been so cold, and it's damp, and there's different things that come into play with that, as well as, saving seeds. This cold, things aren't ripening. And so how do I save seed for next year, next year or the year after? This seed production that I is planning to get is my next year's crop or the year after this crop, and not being able to harvest that because of weather. Again, I don't put all my eggs into one basket, but, it does definitely put a damper on the farm and on the business when weather plays this yo-yo effect of highs and lows so dramatic, and then a consistent cold.
Yeah.
We need heat to get things to ripen, and it's just not happening. But at the same time, it's also, realizing too, when we become more susceptible to what the soil is providing, instead of thinking what it should be providing, right? Or my want versus my reality, there's a lot to be said about this. Yes, I'm pushing this farm to produce now for customers who are asking for the same things over and over again. Why? Because they've read something and that's what they think they're supposed to eat, right? Like, I can't believe, I'm shocked how many people that I know now that were so avid about their health. And I'm just going to say it. I'm not judging, but I'm shocked. They were avid about fresh food. They were avid about exercise, being healthy-minded by, being open-minded to things, but are now on Ozempic. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, honestly, I'm doing that. Like, I'm like, I'm
willing to put
I
that
don't
in,
want to
yeah.
be a judgy, but I'm shocked, right? But it's like, okay, well, that's your choice, and I'm grateful if that's going to work for you. That's what it is. But at the same time, I'm like, what happened to eating healthy? Where's your juice? Where's your, minimal proteins? Only I don't have time for that. I'm, trying to pay a PG&E bill or rent or this or that. And I'm like, okay, we got to get grounded. We got to figure this out and keep us moving, right? Like, there's a lot of this going on. And I know I'm not the only one that is hearing this.
Yeah.
And it's like, at the same time, it's like, okay, there needs to be a core of us that are going to start journaling, start grabbing a hold of things, trading, showing a value of things that are important for our future. We all know if we keep growing the same things over and over again in the same soil, what happens? Disease,
Yeah.
bacteria,
Depletion of those minerals and nutrients that plant would need, or that you want that plant to have in it. It has to have companionship or follow up with, putting that back into the soil in some part of the year, plus one of the seasons.
So what happens when the market and people are still asking for the same things over and over again, right? It's like, what do? I feel like we just need to educate better, maybe stimulate, entice. Yes, we need to get out there and educate. I started the conversation off earlier with, instead of just voting, getting your information from the source to actually understand what we're voting, because regulation it's crazy to me to be out in the public like I am and having people have these open conversations like they're going to do something, they're going to do it, or they're buying something, and they have no idea what they're buying or what they're doing.
Yeah.
And to me, especially when it comes to food, they should know. Mm-hmm. And there should be no question. Just because you buy it in a grocery store, does that mean the reality of what it says on that label is truth? Doesn't mean that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially what are the intentions behind it? So much is going on with, just money, corruption, things that are unnatural. Mm-hmm. And, I did a talk yesterday on essentially foraging and, how do we find food? How do we come to food within our days, daily lives, and really looking at it where when you are foraging something or you are, growing something and you really have maybe a smaller amount of food than you would if you just purchased a lot, you really, I think, find sort of, that you live within your means more that way. You're like, wow, I have this much, or I'm this rich in this, and this is enough to sustain me.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we got to look at is that when people earn things a little bit more, like maybe they worked for getting that food physically, or, they put time and energy into growing it or something, knowing where it was going to come.
Well, there is the saying, you can give a person a fish and you can feed him for a meal, or you teach them how to fish and you can feed him for a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And that's, that's always been my concept, because it's like, I've always wanted, I don't expect you to grow and work like I do, but I want you to understand a basics of your food.
Yeah.
And I've always struggled with
appreciation,
the importance of education, right? The importance of education. What is education? When we're graduating human beings out of our public school system and they don't even know where life begins, and you know what I mean, in the soil, when they don't understand where their food comes from. Yes, we've had farm to school programs and we have local food in our cafeterias now, and it's like, but there's still not a reality of actually teaching that in our food system, right?
Yeah, that traditional ecological knowledge, that goes way back, and how to find things or what to do. I shared a lot of things that I just had found recently or had in my driveway growing. And so it was sort of like, hey, here's all the abundancy that was just out my front door today. Mm-hmm. And look at the things I could find. And I had some pine cones that we had just been gathering and, kind of doing some pine nut.
Local pine nuts are awesome.
And someone's like, I never realized that pine cones were full of pine nuts.
Well, and this year's going to be a little bit more productive because we've had such a cold winter. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've noticed on the east side that the pines have more seed because they got cold this last year. Uh-huh. And so you're actually getting a harvest where we haven't seen a harvest on our local pine nuts in years, and it's hard to get into them. They're not like the soft pine, like people know of pine nuts, right? But it's, once you get into them, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
That oil is, and people don't realize, I talk about this all the time, people go, well, is it edible? And I'm like, well, something eats it. So what do I, and granted, there are plants that you should not just, tempt or try, right? We know a lot of them, but
that should be part of your knowledge and education too.
And again, that's something that to me is so basic that it would be simple to teach in school. Right? Mm-hmm. In elementary and middle school. Like, to me, that is the perfect ages. But again, I'm wishful thinking and maybe dreaming a little bit, because here we are in this society. We have, I'm 50 years and under us that have no clue about, just the basic things to survive. What do I look for locally that I could eat? And I mean, it's a catastrophic issue that we have. But at the same time, this is where there's so many reasons why I'm pushing to build this club within my company and not make it a nonprofit. I'm not doing it as a nonprofit. I'm building this club within my company because my company has 30 plus years of heritage heirloom knowledge.
Providing,
growing it, harvesting it, selling it, carrying it on. That's where I'm reading. And I'm also surrounded by resources of people that have recipes and tools and kitchenware that we can share of, like, okay, what is this? Like, I talked about it last week about my nutcrackers. This last week was hilarious because people are like, I had no idea there was an actual hand nutcracker. Like, I'm like, let me show you what it is, and then it really stimulated, thank God there is still the Amish society of our country, because they're like, where would you find it? And I'm like, locally, if you can't find them at antique shops or vintage stores like Sonia has in my shop, I'm like, you got to go to Amish country. Amish country is the only ones that are going to still have these kind of equipment that you can use, that you don't need gas powered or electric powered.
It's never going to go out of style.
It's not going to go out of style with the Amish, So, thank
Still
goodness
going.
for that, right?
Yeah.
Because how would I promote to these other people, these different types of tools? I have an ice cream shop, Scuba Nature ice cream shop at Nature's Touch too. How fun was it to have the conversation with two little girls? Oh my God, they were so cute. about when they go to their grandma's house, she won't let them just buy ice cream. They have to go get the rock salt and churn the, you know, and make the ice
Earn
cream.
it.
And it was super sweet because both of them were talking about how my ice cream tastes like the ice cream that they get when they go to their grandma's house. And I'm like, well, maybe it's because the recipes are similar.
Homemade
you know?
flavor, it's in there.
And I'm like, and they're like, well, what is it? I'm like, it's just ice cream. It's made with cream. It's made with real sugar. It's not made with.
It's made right now.
It's high fructose corn syrup, made within the last month. You know, but it's you know,
Yeah.
but it's. And
But I
it's
mean, that's
compliant.
better than any storage shelf.
Oh no, I know.
Product that
It's
you're going to
legal,
find somewhere
You know, yeah,
for sale.
It's crazy because it's not like, to me, it's not anything special. It's wholesome food. This is what nobody deserves high fructose corn syrup and food dyes. Okay?
Yeah.
Nobody deserves
Not
that.
even animals.
Not even animal. Nobody deserves
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, it's like all I've ever done was just try to hold on to simplicity. You know, realities of real food, not this what trend or what dietary or what this, you know, what happened to gluten-free? Everybody was gluten-free. Remember, you could even buy gluten-free toilet paper during COVID. You know, like what happened to all that? See, and this is what I kept telling people is, do you really need it? Because what you're doing is you're following a trend that trends destroy food. People don't realize that.
That's a good point. I like that.
Trends destroy food. Trends create regulation. Please, people, know yourself, know your body, know what you can consume before you follow.
Yeah.
You know,
I like
because
it.
that's the reality of what we live in when it comes to food and farming. And you know, weather is playing a factor into all of this. Yes, of the availabilities of things, labor, government. Our government's still shut down. You know, it's like there's, you know, so much to this, but let's simplify this. Let's bring this back.
Yeah,
bring it
with
back home.
individuality too, you know, like I have so many menus where I've created, you know, something where people get to pick their veg, protein, and starch. And so I don't have to have someone come in and be like, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. They get to come in, they get to choose exactly what they can eat. So it's not like they're having to feel like, oh, I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan, I'm, you know, gluten-free, I'm any of these things. This is all just real food. You pick the real food that you can or want to eat without having limitation, because there's so many ways that we can build, you know, those things together. Like I said, it's like, hey, okay, you don't want to have this certain type of protein, meat protein. Okay, you're eating a vegetable and a starch, or you may be getting more veg, or however you want to break that up for yourself. But really giving that back to people to choose, instead of like, oh, the chefs now need to create something that's minus, you know, this ingredient in their, you know, dish, or they have to do things that are catering to other people. And it's like, hey, come in and be able to choose for yourself what you need. And that's where, again, foraging or growing your own or doing things for yourself, you're going to be able to put all those things that you love into your diet, as opposed to having to, you know, subtract or minus something from it, or follow some kind of trend that
it was crazy
seems
to see
popular.
like during COVID, especially, of, you know, how many people would come into our store and be like, I am celiac, I can't have any gluten. I'm like, okay, you know, before COVID, it was not a problem. We had choices, right? We could get stuff, and then things weren't selling out. Distribution was happening. Then all of a sudden, all these new regulations kicked and distribution stopped, right? And things were changing, and it was crazy because people just really didn't want to go without. And my avid gluten-free customers that were like, no, Melanie, I can't eat it unless it's gluten-free. I can't do dairy. I can't do this. All of a sudden, they could do all of that again. And I was like, wait a minute, guys. Like, what happened? Well, what was I supposed to eat? And I'm like, well, but you were saying this for dietary issues. Do we not have the dietary issues anymore? Well, obviously not. And I'm like, well,
Wow.
you realize we almost got rid of whole wheat bread because you wanted
Everyone was
gluten,
going
you
against
wanted
it.
xanthan gum and rice, and you wanted all those carbs instead of actual whole wheat, you know. And it was crazy to me to see that transformation. And then, you know, after COVID, it became a different, you know, these trends. It was, I'm like, so do you really? No, it was a suggestion that I should eat gluten-free to lose weight, or my complexion, or this or that. And, you know, and there are some that were, this one sweet lady, and I'm like, she would get violently sick if she was exposed to gluten, right? She was my true gluten-free celiac patient that came to us and wanted to make sure that everything she was getting was exactly what she needed. And I was
Yeah.
like super honored to fulfill her because we could, and we still can. It's just different now. You know, it's labeling requirements and claim requirements and packaging requirements, and you know, just the amount of, you know, ingredients now that have to happen in order to make it legal for sale. Most people have no clue when it comes to public health, when it comes to what you're preparing and selling for consumers. And some people
Yeah.
are doing it right now, but they haven't been inspected yet. Let's just put it that way. They got to get inspected. They got to be, you know, and it's just a matter of time. I used to think, why me? Why am I getting all these regulators walking into my door? You know, whether it be the FSIS or public health department, state health department. I mean, I had all of them. Dairy department. I had the dairy discussion today. I've had them all in my store. And I'm sure there's more that haven't been in my store yet, thank God. You don't have to find me if you don't want to. But at the same time, it's like I've had them all, and it was just a matter of time. It wasn't, was I doing anything wrong or right? Was I intending to do something wrong or right? It had nothing to do with it. I went to the agencies that were available to me, right? Agencies gave me the information that they had given, that they knew they needed to give me. But they weren't required to give it all to me because they didn't know themselves. So it was just a matter of time before something went up on social media that I had, or I was producing something gluten-free or raw or cage-free, range-free, grass-fed. You know, these are all claim words, right? And, you know, I promoted it one time on social media, and here they come. And lucky for me, I have Crescent Valley Meats. I have Nature's Touch. I have, you know, attorneys that I can call and say, hey, can I put this out there without getting in trouble? And then the question becomes, who do you want to get in trouble with, and who do you not want to get in trouble with? I'm like, well, I don't want to get in trouble with my customers, but I need to make the regulators happy because I can't afford the regulators either. I need my customers to be able to afford my regulators. Help me here.
Yeah.
You know, like
Stuck
that's how
in
I
the
talk
middle.
to my attorneys.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it becomes, well, Milne, that's a very gray area. I'm like, well, can we just make it black or white? Like, it's got to be yes or no. Not, well, let's see how much are you willing to pay for that. No,
Yeah, that's
I
not
want
a
to know
good
what's
answer.
right and what's wrong. Give it to me.
Yeah.
Right? Nope, it's not like that.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, yeah, so many things come up that, you know, don't have all that, you know, many purposes through it other than to satisfy.
Yep, it's
certain-
one size fits all, and it's a pay-to-play system. But how much are we going to pay? I don't have very much more to pay. On that note, speaking of paying to play, don't want everybody to forget, because I am getting a lot of text messages, a lot of emails. November 15th, Saturday, November 15th, small press day. Harvest under a ton of your olive fruit. Bring it to Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest, 225 South Main Street, downtown Templeton. That is when we will press your fruit into juice. Remember, olive oil is actually fruit juice, but it is olive oil. And you first come, first serve, 8 o'clock, November 15th, Saturday. Come join us. Please make sure that you've inspected for fruit fly and fruit fly damage. If you don't know what I'm talking about, come and see me before you harvest them, because I don't want you to harvest them with the intent of thinking they're going to go to olive oil and they're not going to be able to. I need you to pick that fruit, though, because the more we let it rot, the more fruit fly problem we have. And there's a lot of other things that go on with not picking your fruit on your olive tree. So, you know, let's be proactive in this small farm issue, right?
Yeah.
So let's
I know
do it
people that
right.
are interested, so definitely looking forward to that.
November 15th for Nature's Touch. You know, first come, first serve. The press will be there. A couple other events that I'm just going to throw out there, which is Founders Day, which is Templeton's historic day that, you know, when Templeton was founded, November 1st, Saturday. I'm working close hand with my neighbors, who is the Templeton Historical Society, who puts this event on. So I want to just throw that out there. November 1st, Saturday, 11 to 3 is Founders Day. Thank you, Laura Brooks, for letting me know and just keeping us in the loop. We're going to, you know, of course, be Nature's Touch and everybody else that's involved in that. But we still, you know, inviting people to come out. but also just be patient and understanding, because they're going to have a ton of vintage equipment, tractors, and all kinds of stuff. And there's a whole concept of the Vintage Club and Exchange that also is going to take place on November 1st. So stay tuned on that. There's, small press, that. What else is going on, Josh? There's a lot in my world right now.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting to the end of a lot of the harvest seasons. And like we talked about last week, getting through fall, looking forward to the next seasons, really stocking up everything we can, going into the cold part of the year. So, so much more that will be coming on and that we're wanting to start, in the next couple months to be planting again and renewing. So it's end of one season, beginning of another.
Speaking of seasons, so this weekend, to all our listeners, I actually, this is kind of funny because I got noticed that a couple of our listeners to the South County or south of the state are listening to us. So reminding our listeners, Southern California, I'm going to be in San Diego this weekend at the Feed Raw Real Summit, San Diego. So just Google Feed Real Raw Summit, and you'll see the event that is in San Diego starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Simon, Caleb, the owner of Crescent Valley Meats, and I are going down to represent our raw pet food line, as well as getting to hang out with a lot of our old-time customers that I only get to talk to on the phone, and now I actually get to see them and hang out with them this weekend. So I'm looking forward to this event. This is a pretty big event. And I get to be in San Diego on October weekend. It's still super beautiful. But again, Feed Real Raw Summit in San Diego this weekend. So that's where I'll be. If you want to join it, get tickets. I think they still have tickets available. Come join us. We'll be there. But also, just want to thank all the guys that have been tuning in to Nature's Neighbor to the south, wanting to know what we're doing up here, just looking for resources, even in their community, listening to us, and then reaching out to me going, hey, Mel, how do you do this? Or what regulation for the state is this? Or, how do you approach customers with this? This week has been that kind of, there's others that want to get in and be involved in our show, but it's fun to actually have the reach out, even from that. Other farmers, there's a couple landscapers that we're reaching out. So,
good.
I know.
Getting the word out.
Getting the word out. It's kind of fun. I always think I'm talking to my neighbors here, but, my neighbors even abroad.
Yeah.
So,
we're all neighbors.
We all are neighbors. And so a lot of things are going on. A lot of things happening. Josh and I are working on doing more remote shows, potentially at Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest, potentially with... this will entice Miguel to be more active in this. Is we're going to put Josh in the kitchen on Mondays and have him prepare seasonal so we can actually sample and show people. and Miguel, our producer here, will be able to be our quality control department.
That's the way to get him in.
We're going to make him eat lots of vegetables. Lots of vegetables. So,
love it. I made people make a little forage pesto yesterday and did a little hands-on things with all we've been harvesting. So yeah, looking forward to more.
So just in putting this in your thoughts, okay? So my daughter was paying her brothers to go and harvest tunas off the cactus because she wanted to make juice, right? And it was funny because I had my little big boys trying to not get pricked because none of them had the gloves of being able to pick tunas. And people
use a knife.
And the plant is at the store, right? And this has been there. I know it's been there since before the 30s. Is my grandparents and the original owners at the store. Nature's Touch in Templeton has a cactus plant that's older than 1930. So, my daughter's trying to get the boys to pick it, and it was crazy to me how many people were coming up to us and going, "What are you doing?" And my daughter's like, "I want juice," and they're like, "From what?" She's like, "The tunas.
The fruit.
The fruit of the cactus."
Yeah, they look so red and perfect right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I drove by some on the way to this event. I wanted to stop and harvest, but I'd already picked some nopales, so I showed people, how to use the pads. But the tunas fruit is super fruit.
She was making me laugh because she was like, I'm not going to pick it. I got my two brothers here, so they're picking it. And everybody was just kind of like standing around, like watching the boys, and they know how to pick it. They know how to grab it, cut it the way that it's supposed to, so Savannah can de-thorn it and go make juice from it.
Beautiful.
So, I know, and I giggle because the only reason why they know how to do that is because of some of our ranch workers, my grandma, you know, like I mean, it's just knowledge that has been passed down. And how cool is it to have he's 20 now, 20-year-old and 23-year-old that
Passing it on.
that were
Yeah.
thirsty and wanted to go make fresh juice, and they even knew how to survive, right?
That's
so,
it.
you know, these are the things that I want to do. These are the things that I want to share through our club. You know, I don't always get the time to be able to teach as much as I want to in our retail facility, and that's why this vintage club and exchange is so incredibly important to us, to be able
loving it.
to gather us all together and be able to do this and really generate the resources locally, right? And so, you know, we're kind of needing to cut it. Miguel has an appointment that we got to get to. So, you know, any final thoughts? Anything else?
You know, I really just, coming off weekends of celebration. My little sister got married. Was part of another farm event. So just this time of year is so beautiful, I think, for us to enjoy some of the fruits of our hard labor, literally, figuratively, you know, and really kind of storing up those things that we want to, have for the next season and to share.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, being able to share the knowledge or the foods, from our cultures and families is just really fun.
Thanksgiving is coming, right?
Yeah.
We don't need one day to be thankful. We can be thankful every day. And you just kind of highlighted just the gatherings that you've had. It's about
Dia
being
de los
thankful.
Muertos is coming. Lots
Yeah.
of things that, really
Super exciting.
allow you to, food is love. So we love, sharing that and bringing that to everyone so that we can all, really enjoy and feed ourselves in a good way. So
I'm excited. So
look forward to next time.
Stay tuned. We'll be back. So we are going to do a Indigenous People Day next Monday. So we will be back.
Yeah,
Let's
another
hope
good
that
thing to
we
talk
can
about.
get your guest, because I would love to have her come and talk
Yeah,
about
we'll share some
native
good
culture.
ways. Yes.
So let's do it. And thank you guys again. Come see us. Come support. Love y'all. Take care.